Welcome back, friends. This is Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
gives you college football betting tips. I am said statistics professor, Professor Sides, and you can follow me on Twitter at Professor Sides. Today, we are talking week 14 of the 2021 college football season, conference championship weekend. Cousin Jared, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. I can't believe conference championships are already here. Seems like the season started like 3 weeks ago, and somehow we're here at the back end of it. So just can't believe how fast time's gone by this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was thinking the same thing. It feels like just yesterday we were doing the week 0 and diving into some truly awful games, but there was nothing else happening. And now we're here at, wrapping up the regular season. In case you're new here, you will hear me reference the model throughout the show. So a reminder for everyone that my full power ratings are available in the Google Sheet that is provided in the show's description. The difference between the two teams' ratings, once you account for home field advantage, makes up what the model thinks the spread should be between them. That is also in the sheet. And that gives us a good idea where there's value week to week. In the long run, this is a winning strategy. However, while it does account for recent play, it struggles to account for recent injuries. So what I will attempt to do in the course of this episode is explain where I think the model will shine. Also note that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable every week, that is clearly an impossible reality for any gambler. The aforementioned Google Sheet contains all of this week's picks. We'll also post on Twitter any plays that we don't get it. No, we'll discuss all of them. Any plays that will add on, I guess I should say, as lines move throughout the week and or more research happens. All these links are in the description, so check that out. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We truly appreciate all of that. Last week, we'll have timestamps in the description if you want to just jump ahead to this week's games. We have fewer to talk about, so I just want to open the floor to you to talk about last week. Last week to me was fantastic. You had Ohio State, Michigan, you had Bedlam, you had games throughout the week, you had all the games Friday. So I just want to open the floor to see if you had anything you wanted to talk about with last week.
Well, I don't want to talk about the A&M game. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's true.
That was pretty bad, but it was just really exciting to see the way that Michigan kind of handled Ohio State, and even more importantly than that specific game for me, kind of basically kicking Ohio State out of the playoff and setting up Michigan. Before the season, if you would have said that Michigan would have had a great chance to be in the playoff, I would have thought that you were crazy. So that was probably the best thing for me, and looking kind of at how the playoff field is shaping up, and just how different it's kind of been from what we've seen in the past few years. I think that's the best thing for me, and really refreshing that we've always talked about we need change to keep people interested. And man, I think this year it might change a lot.
It might. Obviously, we've knocked Oklahoma and Clemson out, who are usually there. And I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I mean, is Ohio State really out of the playoff talk? There are scenarios, I feel like, where they sneak back in. Obviously, I think other than if you live in Columbus, you went there, that's fine. I get that you're rooting for that, right? For the rest of us, I feel like we're not rooting for that. But I'm looking at it thinking, if and we'll talk about the Michigan, of course, if Michigan accidentally loses to Iowa, if Oklahoma State loses to Baylor, if Cincinnati loses to Houston, I'm sitting there, I'm like, Ohio State's going to end up back in the same playoff if we don't watch out, right?
Yeah, and the same can be said about Alabama too, in my opinion. I still think there's a way Alabama can get in it if things just really go really crazy. So let's just hope, usually we're all pulling for complete chaos in college football.
Right.
At least I am, right?
Right.
This weekend, I don't want any chaos. I want all of the favorites to win, and I want us to get, that fresh set of teams in the playoff. And, we make sure that we keep Alabama and Ohio State out. That's the thing that I'm most invested in this weekend.
Right. And we talk about how, the playoff rankings, don't matter week to week. This one, I think, is a little bit interesting because what do you do with Bama, right? Bama was just we all kind of assumed Bama would handle Auburn. The A&M loss was on the road. A&M was a top team. We all just kind of assumed, Bama might lose to Georgia by 3, 7, 10, whatever they lose, and they'll make it. And now, after last week, and as you already mentioned, A&M losing makes that loss look a little bit worse. Right now, I don't know as much what to do with Bama. If they're kind of one of those close losses, they're still in. And I feel like the committee does crazy things every year. You can talk me into anything with Bama, any restriction.
Yep, you're exactly right.
Yeah, so it was a fantastic week. Something that flew under the radar, right? North Texas getting bowl eligible, winning at home against UTSA. I don't know how many people saw that one. It was one of my picks here was to take the points with UNT. I thought UNT would keep it close, and we'll talk about UTSA, of course, shortly. But you had that one was a surprise game that to me kind of flew under the radar with all the other chaos happening. You mentioned Michigan. That was a fantastic game. Bedlam.
Oh yeah,
my goodness.
You can't make that stuff up.
You really can't. And of course, I feel like most of us are watching that thinking, if you know anything about this rivalry, this is the same thing's happening. Like it does every year. Oklahoma State's got a chance, and then they screw something up, and then Oklahoma wins again. But then to come back the way they did, and then Oklahoma gets the ball back, and you're like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And they get a stop, and then Oklahoma gets the ball back again in that long Caleb Williams just running. And I'm like, is the defense out there? Like where, that like 50-yard run or whatever. And I mean, that game was, my heart was just racing for probably an hour after that game.
Yeah. And then after the game, Lincoln Riley saying that he's not going to be the next head coach at LSU, which he wasn't.
He's not. I mean, what a wild week. So, I mean, I loved it. I hope you did too. We'll move on to this week. All lines courtesy of BetOnline and accurate as of the recording of this episode Monday morning. We're not doing it Sunday night. We're doing it Monday morning. So a little bit more movement on the lines here. No segments this week. We've got 10 championship games. We've got an 11th game, which we'll get to, and then we're also going to talk about Army Navy next week. So we're gonna hit you up every which way possible here. Starting us off Friday night, Conference USA, Western Kentucky at UTSA. Western Kentucky is a short 1.5 point favorite. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, UTSA kind of coming back to earth here the past few weeks for sure. So looking at this game, I think you could have, for me, I wouldn't have been surprised to see either team favored by a point or two here. These feel like pretty two evenly matched teams to me. Last time they played, it really was an evenly matched game. UTSA won that game, but it was really evenly matched. Actually, Western Kentucky had 100 more yards than UTSA did in that game, but yards per play, they were roughly about equal. Neither team really got killed with turnovers or anything there. It was just a really good, close game. And I remember talking about it at the time. We said, this is a game that you're going to want to watch.
I think we said take the, I don't know if you took the over, but I think we said take the over. This will be a ton of points. This will be a lot of fun. Watch this game. And it lived up to the hype.
It did live up to the hype. And I think this
almost 100 points.
Yeah, and I think this one's going to be just as good. So no play for me here. I think this line is well set. Again, just get your popcorn ready, and I think you're going to be really entertained watching this game on Friday night.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people probably haven't seen much of these two teams. I think you're in for a treat. The total is up in the 70s, I believe. And there will be a lot of points. Yeah, there will be a lot of points in this game. If you had to make me pick, I would take the over just because I wouldn't take the under with either one of these teams.
Right.
Obviously, taking a number that big, is a little scary in the championship game. You never really know. So I'm not playing the over, but this should be a fun game to watch. I'd lean UTSA. I leaned them on the money line. They're plus 102, about even money right now. This feels like a coin toss game. So give me plus odds with the home team. Right. I do have Western Kentucky as a little bit better than UTSA, which might surprise some people if you just look at the records. UTSA, last time these two teams played, had a 76% post-game win expectancy. We'll talk a little bit about that number throughout the episode with these rematches. What that means, more or less, is that UTSA played pretty well, should have won the game. They did win the game.
Yep.
That was on the road. I think my hammer home point for why I lean UTSA, and I think it's going to be a shootout, kind of one of those I feel like it's one of those last team that has the ball wins, or last team that has the ball throws an incomplete pass in the end zone and loses type wild games. But my last point here for why I lean UTSA is the fact that they tend to play poorly the week before a big game. How much of that is accurate? I don't really know, but it continues to happen. And so as my sample size of this continues to increase, it makes me think the model's really pulling in the aggregate of how they're playing, which overall is kind of so-so. But when you go back the week before they played UTEP, the week before they played UAB, now the week before this game, I believe one of them they had a bye week, so they didn't have to worry about it. But the other two, and there might have been, I think there was a fourth one actually, because they struggled with
UNLV. I can't remember who they played after that, but
I think it was Western Kentucky. I think the Western Kentucky game the first time was after that. They struggled with UNLV. They struggled with Southern Miss, and then they struggled last week against inferior teams. So it's not it's which side of the coin are you falling on? Are you saying that that means that they're specifically not that good? It's possible. Or is it one of those things where they just aren't quite as hyped up for those games? And the fact that it keeps happening there, just it makes me wonder. I don't love it. I'm not with these small sample sizes, I can't say for sure, right? But it's one of those things where it makes me think, I wonder if there's something there. Again, UTSA played them really well on the road. Now they're at home.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're getting around even money on the money line, I think that's a solid investment in the long run. So that's kind of where my head is on that game. The other Friday night game, Oregon versus Utah. This game is in Las Vegas. The model, a little bit of a disagreement here with where the spread is. The spread is Utah -2.5. And I'll let you give your take before I come in with mine here, Cousin Jared.
So I saw this line when it opened at Utah -3. I was thinking, hey, guys, I literally just watched this game. I'm not an idiot. Like I don't forget what happened 2 weeks ago. And then the line moved down to 2.5. And I thought it was a weird line before that. Then it moved down to 2.5. And now I'm feeling, man, like something is up that I'm not aware of. I'll let you disclose the post-game win expectancy number, but let's just say Utah was expected to win that game at the end of it. You went back and looked at the box score, and nothing really like stood out. Oregon couldn't get their running game going, but they were playing from behind the entire time. So maybe, something not completely unexpected there. Let me tell you what I think a big part of that game was. Oregon could not get a third down stop to save their lives. Utah was 11 for 14 on third down conversions, which just seems crazy.
Probably not repeatable.
Exactly. Probably not repeatable at all. So the fact that this line seems way off, and the fact that I think there's going to be some regression on that third down conversion percentage. Oregon's probably going to get a few more possessions than they did last game. This is something I'm holding off on for now, and especially if the line hangs around that 2.5 number, obviously, or even 3, or based on what I saw 2 weeks ago, 3.5. I'm fine with waiting, do some more research, kind of hear what others are thinking throughout the week, and then maybe make a bet on this later in the week, because right now, again, it just seems really, really strange to me, and I almost to the point where I don't trust myself here, because this line just seems so weird. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, this line stinks. Absolutely. And it's interesting, right? You can talk yourself into this line stinks and go on either side, right? You can talk yourself into someone knows something I don't. Let's take Oregon. You can talk yourself into this is too easy. Let's take Utah, right? So it's kind of funny the way our brains work. We always try to talk ourselves into something. So I'm going to take the opposite approach here, and I'm going to say try to talk myself out of the play that I want to make here. The model says Utah -3.5, and I'm going to try to talk myself out of that play. And that's about it. That's all I got. I can't do it. It's the best bet for me. Utah -2.5. Look, Utah was 100% post-game win expectancy in that week. 12 win against them. That was only a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I'm totally with you. 11 for 13 on third down is unsustainable. But hey, if they're 6 of 13, instead of winning by 31, they win by 17. I mean, they still win that game handily. It's one of those things where both teams have struggled against inferior opponents, but Utah to me is the team that I think Utah is the team that Oregon was hoping to be with regards to this playing well at the end of the season, and they just haven't done it. So I just can't see why this line is what it is. I can't find a good reason to think that Oregon is going to hang in there and basically win this game. Because if you're taking Oregon +2.5, you think Oregon could win the game. Again, not that it can't be a 2-point game. We saw it in the Iron Bowl, just 2 days ago. But if you're taking 2.5, you think Oregon's going to win, and I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, well, but so when you go back, and I know Utah made the quarterback change, they've definitely been a different team since they've done that. But you mentioned to me earlier this week, kind of like the rest of Utah's wins haven't exactly looked like that Utah win against Oregon. When you go back and look at their schedule, they beat USC by 16. They beat Arizona State by 14. That was actually kind of more impressive. They were down 21-0 in that game and scored 35 straight points to win 35-21. They lost to Oregon State best win of the season. They beat UCLA by 20. They killed Stanford, which looking back, that meant more about Stanford. Then they had, fairly close games with Colorado and Arizona sandwiched around that Oregon game. So, you know, I think we've built up Utah here at the end of the season. Don't get me wrong, I think they're really good, but when you go back and really look, it's like they have maybe they've got two really solid wins, and then a few that's like, okay,
Yeah.
nothing that impressive that would make you think that they would just crush Oregon like that again.
And that's a good point. And this is why I said I can't talk myself into Oregon, because to your excellent point, I think if we did the same exercise with Oregon, it actually makes Oregon look worse.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If Oregon didn't have the exact same thing, I'm like, ooh, you're right. This is a good point. But Oregon looks just as bad. And the other thing that I will remind everyone of here is that the model knows all of this. The model's taking all that into account, and it still thinks that Utah should be -3.5. I think my thought on it is, had Utah played against the weaker teams like they should have and played better, then this to me is more of a Utah -6, -7 type game.
Well, and good point. Maybe even, the games that they played before they made the quarterback change, what would the outcomes of those games have been had Cam Rising been playing the whole time? Yeah, excellent point.
Exactly. So like I said, every time I look at this, and like I said, we talked about this yesterday, I kind of tried to talk myself out of Utah. But every point that you make in that direction, to me, I've got a counterpoint that says that Utah is the side to be on here, especially at 2.5. And that's why it's a best bet at 2.5.
Yeah.
If it gets back to 3, to me, it's just a normal play. I could easily see Utah winning a close game, but under 3, this just seems too easy. And it reminds me of last week, we talked about San Diego State Boise, and I said, I kind of went with the Boise's the better team. I don't really understand this. San Diego State's won 10 games. Why are they only giving me this many points or whatever? This is fishy. I'm going to go the opposite way, right? Because the logic said San Diego State's the 10-win team at home. Take the 10-win team at home. And I was like, no, I'm going to go the other direction. And then we saw how that played out. So exactly. I think this season, and this is an interesting point that I want to make. This season has been really weird. A lot of your conventional wisdom has not held. A lot of the line moves have not necessarily been helpful in determining where the game is going to go. Exactly. I think if you go back to look at the season, and who knows if this will hold, but we have a pretty decent amount of games. I think a lot of this season, the smartest thing to do is don't overthink it. And in this one, I think it's don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just play the 2.5 with Utah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll make it 3 weeks in a row where you've talked me into a pick on the podcast. We're 1-1.
We're 1-1. So this is a big one.
This is the deciding factor. So go ahead, and I'm locking it in right now. Right. I'm going to take Utah -2.5 here as well.
I wondered if, as we talked about this, I wondered if I was going to be able to do that for you.
Yeah. So you talked me into it. So right. Now official play for me, Utah -2.5 here.
All right, I like it. Moving on to Saturday, the Big 12 championship game in Arlington, a game that I might find myself at depending on what ticket prices look like. Actually, my alma mater, Baylor, playing Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a 5-point favorite. What's your take on this one?
Do we know who's playing quarterback for Baylor? I know that the back end, that's a record question. I know you don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for Baylor. I know that the freshman has looked pretty good here in the past couple of games for Baylor, but I just have concerns about a freshman quarterback against this Oklahoma State defense. Obviously they're pretty nasty. So no play for me here. Obviously, in a game like this, I took a glance at the total here, but it was like 46.5. And I mean, that's just kind of getting to the point where, especially with two really good teams like this, one play here, a punt return, something like that could really set up that 46 number to go over really easily. So, I thought we had an easy under in the Tech Baylor game last week. All of a sudden I look up in the fourth quarter and they're at 51. I had under 52. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, this was easily an under here, early in the fourth quarter. So anyway, staying away from the total at that number as well. So no play for me here as of now. If we find out that, and you're going to help me with the Baylor starting quarterback's name, Bohannon. Yeah, if Bohannon's playing, I may be eyeing a play on Baylor, but definitely don't want to make a play until I know for sure that he's playing.
Yeah, you talked about that total. I still think under's the way to go in this game. I'm reminded of 2 years ago, the Baylor Oklahoma game in Arlington. I was at that one as well, and it was the same sort of thing. And I don't remember which of the Oklahoma quarterbacks was there. It was one of their awesome ones, because that's all they seem to have up until this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And that game was easily under as well. So I still think under's the way to go. I think I don't know if Oklahoma last week stayed under, but if it didn't, it was only because of that wonky sequence there in the first half and the whole, muffed punt that gets you down with the ball at the 2 or in the end zone. I can't remember. And
Right.
that game should not have had that many points. So if it didn't stay under, it was only kind of, by the grace of God, it didn't. Baylor stays under last week. I still think this is an under game to me. I lean Baylor +5, and here's my logic for that. Number one, this is an interesting spot. I am giving Oklahoma State 1 point for home field advantage. I know this game is in a different state, but Oklahoma State has never been to a Big 12 title game, and they travel really well. I think their fans will come out in force, and so I'm not sure if it should be 1 point or half a point, but I'm giving them a small edge just because I think they will they'll have quite a presence there. Both teams have done really well against the spread this year. Oklahoma State, just fantastic. Baylor, good, not great. This is a situation where, like I said, I lean Baylor. We don't know who the quarterback is. Given that Bohannon was an option for this last week, I assume with 1 more week off, I assume that he will be the guy. Shapen looked really well in some of his passes last week. However, obviously a freshman in this environment against this good defense isn't ideal. I lean Baylor just because I don't know what to expect from this game. And if you're getting more than a field goal, I think that's probably the right move. It's not a play I love. So it's kind of one of those more like half unit type plays for me, just because it's one of those. I think there's value here because this should be tight. If you remove Baylor's first half, they didn't show up this last game when they played in Stillwater. The second half was pretty even. I expect that sort of game where it's just kind of a slugfest, grinded out, ugly, score here, score there type ball game. And I think there's value with 5 points. I don't see this line getting up to 7, which would obviously be a huge thing.
Even like 6 would make a big difference for me.
Because it could get to overtime, obviously. And 6 is a number that you like to have in that scenario. So it's not one I love, but I just think anything could happen. So take the points.
Yep.
It feels like a situation to potentially, and I'm just going to throw this out there, potentially you have a better spot for Baylor than Oklahoma State. Here's what I mean by that. Baylor looked pretty bad against TCU and Tech, both situations they were entering in, coming off of big games, etc. You had the Baylor Tech game last week where you've got a former, basically like the number 2 man at Baylor now working with Tech. I'm not saying anything nefarious happened there. I'm just saying he knows Baylor, and it's it's not that he's telling them play calls. I'm not saying that, but it's one of those, he knows more than anybody exactly what Baylor's trying to do. He's going in there saying, hey, this is how we want to handle them. That gives Tech a little bit of a boost. Oklahoma State coming off of Bedlam, it's not one, again, where I love it, but there's a decent chance that if there's any flatness from Oklahoma State, any bit of a Baylor looked bad last week because of it being Tech, but they actually aren't quite as bad as they look, then I think you're getting a little bit of value here at 5,
Yeah, I completely, like, one of the easiest games of the season, I think, to call a hangover for a team here in Oklahoma State, just because, we talked about their record in Bedlam the past few years. What was it, Gundy 2-14 as the coach in Bedlam or something like that?
Either the last 8 years or the last 20 years or the last ever. It doesn't matter what time frame you go with, right? The record in Bedlam being so
exactly. So I could agree with you 100%. I think you could easily envision a hangover for Oklahoma State here.
Yeah. So it's just something to think about before that game kicks off. At the same time, we will have MACTION. This feels like it's been a Thursday, Friday conference championship. It feels like it should be again. It's sad that this game is on Saturday.
This should be a Thursday game. I mean, let's be honest. It should be Thursday.
It does. It should be Thursday. It should be standalone Thursday where this is all we can watch. I think this will be a fun game. But with everything else happening, is it going to get, push the background? Kent State versus Northern Illinois. This game is in Detroit. This is a 3-point spread. Kent State's favored. What is your take on this one?
So I've been in love with Northern Illinois the past few weeks, and definitely thought about taking them again here. But man, I assume that their starter is going to be back, Rocky Lombardi. He didn't play this last week, which definitely wish that we would have known before we made that pick. Funny that we opened up the podcast last week with, we can't predict, determining when quarterbacks are going to play and when they're not going to play. And then first game of the week, I
On
think
a
for both
Tuesday,
of
yeah,
us,
the Tuesday,
on a
yeah.
Tuesday, it's like no, he's not playing. So anyway, I assume he's going to be back for this game, but I just can't get myself to take the points with Northern Illinois here, mostly because this game happened earlier this season, and Northern Illinois wouldn't have covered the 3 points there. So I think this is going to be a good game, kind of similar to the UTSA Western Kentucky game. Maybe not quite as good as that one as far as just the quality of the teams, but I think with maybe the amount of points that you're going to get and the excitement that you're going to get, I think this game's going to be right up there with that one.
Yeah, if you've got this game on one TV and the Big 12 game on the other, you're going to think they're not the same sport.
Clash of styles.
Yeah, clash of styles for sure. I think a lot of what I've already said so far on the Baylor pick and the UTSA pick apply here. I lean Northern Illinois +3 simply because you're giving me a field goal in a toss-up game. Seems like there's value. Again, nothing that I love here. It's not one that I'm saying, run out to the window. It's close to even money right now. So if you're +3 even money, that's even better.
Yep.
The model says that Kent State should be a short favorite. My model hasn't really liked Kent State, but it's been slowly bumping Kent State up and slowly dropping Northern Illinois down to put this about where the number is. So I think it's a relatively fair number. I'm just saying, hey, if you're getting a field goal in a game that could be a one score, who knows? This is absolutely a game that could end up as a 2-point game just because of weird things happening, a missed extra point, lots of field goals. This could be the last game was a 5-point game. How do you land 5, right? It's not easy to do. And so, that last game was just a wild one as well. I think this one will be as, also. So I think there's some value there at +3 or money line, just because who the heck knows in this game. Not a pick that I love, though. The Sun Belt game, Appalachian State is at Louisiana. Another 3-point favorite here. This is a little bit different. The previous one, neutral site game, this one's at Louisiana, and Appalachian State is a 3-point road favorite.
Yeah, in the last game, and forgive me, I don't have the final score in front of me. Was it? I think it was. Actually, I do have it up here. I think it was 41-13. Louisiana beat App State last time. I mean,
I was gonna say it was like 100-0. It was pretty close.
Yeah, 41-13. Louisiana beat App State last time. So. With that being said, official play for me, I am laying the 3 points with App State here. App State had 4 turnovers in that game. Obviously, we know App State is a very good team. Louisiana is a good team that has their flaws. They just can't seem to put away people this year like they should. App State, on the other hand, has been putting away people with ease over the second half of the season. I think you play that game over again, it's not going to have that same outcome at all. App State has absolutely been rolling. Louisiana losing their coach to go coach at Florida. You would think, with how highly regarded he is, that he played a bigger part in Louisiana winning those games where they were behind or just couldn't put away the opponent. Maybe then he had a hand in, keeping those games close because of bad coaching or whatever like that. So I think that they're going to miss his presence on Saturday. And again, App State has been absolutely rolling. I think that if this game hadn't happened earlier in the season, and again, App State had 4 turnovers in that game, I think this line would be even further out than what it is. So again, official play for me, I am laying the 3 points with App State here.
I feel like I could talk for an hour on this game because there's so many interesting things to discuss. So I'm going to start off with this. First off, Appalachian State is 8-3 against the spread, assuming I typed in all the numbers in my database correctly, which feels impossible. I feel like I have played Appalachian State every week, and I feel like I've lost I feel like I am 0-11 on Appalachian State, and I guess that's right. It doesn't feel right, and I know Appalachian State's gotten us to the window a few times. Maybe I faded them at the wrong spot. I don't know.
Well, you did have South Alabama 1 week that App State covered because they were going
that pick 6. The touchdown they didn't even need. So I mean, there was that for sure. But I feel like Appalachian State has been the team who I know I backed them once, and they destroyed somebody, Georgia State, I believe, Georgia Southern, one of those Georgia teams in a monsoon. I remember that one. I feel like they had a game or I've had a couple games where they've been like -14.5, won by 14, -21.5, won by 21, something like that, where they're winning handily, but they're just not getting getting the cover. So I just wanted to say that seems impossible. Someone can check my math on that. Maybe they're not 8-3 against the spread, or maybe I'm just crazy. You talk about the coach. I'm gonna make a bold statement here and say that coaches don't mean anything with regards to the games. I think, and as I said earlier, the situation to Tech Baylor thing, maybe a little bit because you know what's happening, but I think it's not that they don't mean anything, but I think in most sports, the job of the coach is to get the players to play hard, right? I think we give coaches and managers way too much credit when things are going well and and way too much blame when they're going bad. I think in college, the benefit of the coach is the recruiting. I think that's a huge aspect right there.
At least with the head coach, At
least with the head coach, absolutely. What's the effect of him leaving? I honestly have no idea. I can't say one way or the other. So I'm not out here. Don't mishear what I said earlier. I'm not out here trying to say that it won't matter at all, him leaving. I'm just saying I don't know if it matters, right? I think a lot of times, assuming all the other positional coaches are there, it's kind of business as usual. He's not like calling key timeouts at moments or whatever. Maybe basketball, you make that argument. I'm not even sure I buy it there.
Right.
So I don't know what to make of that. I think it's an interesting storyline, absolutely, because of all the other coaching moves. I believe this is the only one that's really affecting the games this week. I say other one, really the one that everyone's talking about, of course, with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
My model has this about a pick 'em, so I lean +3. So I'm on the other side of you here. Kind of just like I said the last game, if you're giving me a field goal in a coin toss game at home, I think there's either, but I don't love it. I can't make this an official pick. Like I said, this is more of a half unit type play for me, simply because, as you said, Appalachian State is a very good team. There's a decent chance that had a couple things bounce differently. This is an even bigger number, which scares me a little bit. The head coaching thing, again, I don't know what to make of that. So it's not a pick that I'm running to the window to make, but I think +3 offers some value here at home.
Yeah, this is the exact opposite of the Utah game, the Utah line, where the books making this number what it was reinforced what I thought of this game, which made it easy for me to kind of hop on. And so this was the exact opposite of Utah in that sense.
Gotcha. And you may be absolutely right. Like I said, it's not something I love. It's just one of those. I feel like it's more of a coin toss game. Obviously the scenario now is Appalachian State wins by 3, and we all just say, well, that was a waste of time for us, monetarily speaking. But that one should be also an interesting one as well. Moving on to one of the bigger spreads of the week, the American Athletic Conference game, Houston at Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a 10.5-point favorite. I said on pod last week at the very end, we talked about this, and I said that I would have had Cincinnati a 10-point favorite on a neutral field. I didn't know at the time. I didn't think about the fact that they play home games here. Now, you added home field advantage. I'll let you infer what that says here about that. But I'm a little surprised at this number. I don't know where your head's at.
So I'll just cut straight to the chase. Everybody knows I was wanting to play the under in this game. It opened at 55. I would have loved the under at 55 here. Now it's down to 53.5, and it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I can't bring myself to bet the under at 53.5. And I don't think that 55 is not coming back. So
it's not coming back now.
Yeah. So no play for me on this game. If I were forced to make a play, I feel like that's a lot of points to potentially get with Houston in a low scoring game. So I think if I had to, kind of make a recommendation, that would probably be where my head would be at. But man, at the same time, it's like, I really want Cincinnati to get into the playoff. So part of me is just saying, I don't want to be invested in this game because I'm already emotionally invested in wanting to see Cincinnati kind of crash the Power 5 party. So anyway, again, if I had to make a play, it would be definitely a lean towards taking the points with Houston. But again, I like the total, and that's gone.
Yeah, you had the home field advantage here. My model makes us a 13-point spread now. So I'm laying it with Cincinnati. I'm laying the 10.5 as an official pick. I can't make this a best bet for basically everything you just said. It's not one that I want to be overly invested in. It could be a low scoring game. If it's on the south side of 10, I think it's a best bet. If it does for some reason get to 9.5, maybe even 10, I like it a lot more there. Again, I have no idea where the number is going to go, but I think 10.5 is a solid play. I think Cincinnati is a much better team at home. We saw what they did the last couple of weeks. They're starting to roll again. So official pick for me, Cincinnati minus 10.5. Side note on that total, my gut says as long as it's 52.5, you're safe on the under. So that's my prognosis. There's a 52.5, you're safe on the under. Otherwise, I get a little scared off. But
Yeah.
I think that Houston's going to really struggle to score in this game. So I like Cincinnati, and I don't think you're crazy if you do go to the under.
Well, and Cincinnati offense has been playing a lot better here recently, but there was definitely a big stretch there in the middle of the season where you know there was no way they were going to get close to this total, either team.
Right.
You know, Cincinnati's defense really good, then Cincinnati's offense had just gone, you know, out to lunch for a few games. So you may be right. I'm sure I'll be kicking myself for not taking the under here, but I was just so enamored with that 55, and then that it went away real quickly, and it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yep. I hear you. The SEC game, Georgia is a 6.5-point favorite against Alabama. This one is, as always, in Atlanta. What's your pick for us on this one?
So I've watched a lot of SEC football this year, as I do most years. And let me tell you, Alabama's offensive line had a terrible time against A&M. A&M's defense was really good, but this was like not, and this was not a normal amount of pressure that we were getting on Bryce Young in that game. It was very abnormal. We were getting to him almost every play. And then we saw them struggle with LSU, who, you know, at times on defense had looked okay this year, other times where they had not looked good at all on defense. And then we saw them really struggle with Auburn last week. If those things happened against those teams, you tell me what's going to happen with Georgia, because it's not going to be pretty, folks. I think that Alabama is going to struggle to get to like 20 points in this game. You know, maybe they'll end up around 14 or 17 or something like that. On the flip side, you know, maybe Georgia only scores 28 points in this game, but you know, that's going to be plenty, in my opinion. I think they're going to be able to keep Alabama way down. So this is a best bet for me. I'm making this a 2-unit play. I am laying the 6.5 points with Georgia here, and I think they're going to cover this easily. I don't think Alabama is nearly what we have come to expect of them every year, and this Georgia team is just on another level. So I making it a 2-unit play for me, laying the 6.5 points in Georgia.
I agree. I'm laying the 6.5 with Georgia as well. It is a standard pick for me. My power rankings make this Georgia -7. And I think that Alabama has come back to the pack and is normal enough that I trust my rating on Alabama a little bit more now than I did earlier in the season. I don't trust my number on Georgia. I don't know what they really should be. Like they're like basically breaking the computer with how good their defense is.
Yeah.
On Twitter, another model had projected out, you know, something or another with the score of the Georgia Tech game, and had Georgia Tech scoring like 23 points or something. I was like, I bet like all my money that Georgia Tech wasn't going to score 23 points. And sure enough, I think they finished with 0. I stopped paying attention, but Georgia Tech got shut out, didn't they?
Yeah,
I believe that's right.
45
I think 45-0. Yeah, I think Bama can probably avoid a shutout, but Georgia's defense is so insanely good that I don't think any computer system really knows how to properly evaluate just how good they are. And so if my model thinks there's an edge, even a half-point edge on Georgia, I'm backing them on this one. I basically echo everything you said. I think that this game is going to be a lot like the Clemson game to start the season, and that I think both teams are going to struggle to move the ball. But I think that Clemson's defense is better than Bama's, so I think Georgia should be able to score more. And while Bama's offense is better than Clemson's offense was at the time, I'm not sure it matters given how good Georgia's defense is.
You're right.
And so I'm also laying the 6.5 with Georgia. I'd lay it at 7. And if it gets to 7, just my 2 cents, I never exactly know where the line's going to go, but my hunch is if this line gets to 7, and I've seen a couple of 7s pop up, I don't see it getting worse. So I don't really see a reason to run to lay the 7. I think people will will say it's Bama in the championship, the SEC championship game, and I think they will take it. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if this gets to Georgia 7.5. And if it does, it says more than we need to know. If it actually gets to 7.5, it's almost one of those things where, like you said, you're like more emboldened with the line. You're like, oh, this is going to get ugly. Because if there's no resistance to that number, which I just have to think there is some, then that, like I said, that tells us everything we need to know. So my hunch is if it gets out to 7, no rush, it probably as long as you're paying attention, can find a 6.5 and or it holds at 7. 7.5 just seems I just can't. There's enough Bama backers out there that I don't think
Right.
it holds at 7.5.
Yep.
All right, so let's now go back to one of our favorite segments of the last few weeks. Talk me out of Clemson. Since one of us always plays Clemson, this is the segment where we usually discuss one of the most confusing teams of the season. ACC champ. Oh,
they're not there.
Clemson's not there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know what to do now. There's an ACC championship game, and Clemson's not part of it. So I guess we'll let two other teams play, and we'll see how that goes.
A very foreign feeling.
A very foreign feeling. Pittsburgh is a 3-point favorite. Yeah, no Clemson. So I can't be talked into or out of Clemson. So I guess you'll have to talk me in or out of Wake or Pitt on this one.
Well, okay. So what I did here is I talked myself out of Pitt because okay. I was wanting to take Pitt here, and I don't have any good reason for not wanting to take Pitt. I believe just I think it's just all past experience with Pitt. I know I see you've got it on the rundown. They're 8-3 against the spread this year. I should probably just go with my first instinct, which was to back Pitt here, but I just don't know if I trust Pitt in these big games. At the same time, I definitely don't trust Wake Forest in the big games either. I do trust Dave Clawson more than I trust Pat Narduzzi in a big game for whatever that's worth. But man, it's just, I just can't quite get there. And at least with what we're using for grading purposes here, we've got a pretty juiced number on the Pitt side, even though it's 3. So I just can't get myself there right now. Maybe later in the week, I'll come back and do some more research and I'll say, yeah, Pitt is the right play and I'll take it. But I just can't, as of Monday morning, I just can't get myself to do it.
It's an official pick for me, Pittsburgh -3. As Cousin Jared there mentioned, it is juiced for us. It's not juiced for most people. So I noticed I took a look around the board, and for most places, it's -3, -110. So I'm making this an official pick mainly because for you, the listener, especially if you're listening to us early in the week before this number moves a lot, I think -3, -110 is a solid play. I do not love the juice. Again, for grading purposes, we're having to lay -120. So that is not fun to do here. The model makes us -3.5 for Pitt. So I think there's just a little bit of an edge there and around a key number. Right. So you've got that push protection there. So I think Pittsburgh's the right side. I just have so many flashbacks to Wake's defense struggling. And I just don't see how they stop Pittsburgh. Whereas Pittsburgh being such an all or nothing defense, they are going to give up some plays to Wake. This also should be a really fun game. Yeah, they're going to give up a bunch of big plays and a bunch of points, but their defense being all or nothing, they're going to get a couple of stops. And this reminds me of some of those old Big 12, shootout type games where it's one of those. It's like tennis at Wimbledon, right? Where you just got to get a break. And I think Pittsburgh can get a couple of breaks, breaking serve, not good breaks, bouncing their way, right? I think they can get a couple of breaks of serve. I think Pittsburgh's the right side here. So again, if you're at -3, especially -110, I think it's a solid play for you. I think it's a solid investment. And that one. Big Ten, Iowa is playing Michigan in a game that I think we all kind of at some point shuffled about 8 different teams into this game throughout the year, right?
Oh, at least. At least.
Michigan State looked good and Penn State looked good, but Ohio State was going to be the team to be there. It doesn't really matter. And then Wisconsin on the other side, and Minnesota had a run where they look good. It's Iowa, Michigan here. Michigan is an 11-point favorite. What's your take on this one?
I'm not sure there's a line on the board this week that matters less than this one.
I 100% agree.
I think Michigan is either going to win by like 24, or I think one of these teams is going to win by 2. I don't think that it's going to end up anywhere near what this line actually is. With that said, I'm going to contradict myself here. And the total on this game is really low. I personally, the model's been a big fan of Michigan this whole year. They've been really good to us. I personally don't think Iowa has a chance in this game. I think that the way that Michigan plays doesn't necessarily lend itself to a bunch of those game-changing turnovers. And just because I think, I always talk about the Maryland game with Iowa and they had 6 interceptions or whatever it was. Michigan, Michigan doesn't even want to throw the ball 6 times, right? So I think Iowa may have a hard time getting some of those really big plays. I don't think they have a chance to win the game. This total is so low, and I think both teams are just going to grind it out. that you could easily see a situation where Iowa gets a backdoor cover, at the end of this game, whether that's by turnover or, just a regular offensive touchdown or whatever. So I'm not playing at 11. I think this number potentially has a chance to steam up some. If it got to 13, I would definitely be considering taking the points with Iowa, just because, again, I said the number doesn't matter, but that's just a lot of points in a really low scoring game. So no play for me as of now, but this is definitely something I've got my eye on for the rest of the week.
Yeah, and you nailed a lot of points I want to make there. The model has loved Michigan, mostly profitable all season. I've been high on them. Low total, I lean Iowa plus 11. It's not, as I mentioned before with these lanes, nothing I love. I can't make an official play just because partially maybe it's a little bit of bias in my head of Michigan's been so good to us. I don't want to go against them here.
Right.
Partially it's, my gosh, if they did that to Ohio State, what can they do to Iowa?
Right.
They just manhandled Iowa State.
Yeah.
I mean, Ohio State, it wasn't even, the score was close at times. I mean, they just dominated that game. But it's a low total. It's a lot of points. Is there a hangover from last week? We talked about this with Bedlam. It's the same situation. There were a lot of demons that were exercised there. For Harbaugh, for Michigan. This is, I believe, the first time Michigan has been in a Big Ten title game. So I mean, it's very similar to that Oklahoma State thing. This is just too many points for me. So I lean Iowa. I agree with you. I think that either Michigan comes out and is up, 24-0 at half, and we're not even watching this game anymore, or it's one of those ugly, like 9-7 games, and you're going to coast to a win as long as there's not some fluky late thing happening.
And I think both coaches would be completely fine with a 9-6 game.
Exactly. So I think Iowa's the smart side here, given all of those factors, but I don't love the play just because like I said, we saw what Michigan did last week, and they're a team that is not one to be messed with. Iowa, like you said, isn't that great. But I mean, you saw what Iowa did last week. They Iowa'd the crap out of that game. So
exactly.
Against a Nebraska team that also didn't want to throw the ball with the backup quarterback, who's throwing ducks left and right. I mean, Nebraska is not nearly as good as Michigan, I'm going to say, but Nebraska is a similar team to Michigan, and Iowa figured it out then. So this is what they do.
Right? Again, was there any easier game to call of the whole season than that Iowa-Nebraska game? I mean, we all knew exactly how that was going to play out.
Iowa to Nebraska. I mean, just as much as they both possibly could.
And for those that are curious, the total on this Michigan-Iowa game is currently 43.5. So it is.
That's an NFL total. That's a low NFL total.
That's low.
And so, like I said, I mean, this is the crap Iowa. Now, when Iowa struggles, right? If they get behind big early, this is going to get ugly, right? But if Iowa hangs in there, this is what Iowa does. And so, like, would anybody be shocked if you're like, Iowa, hung in there close in the game? They shouldn't have. Like, and I'm not predicting an Iowa win, right? I still have the model Michigan 11 points better. So I still think Michigan will win the game. Right. But I mean, would anybody be surprised if Iowa wins an ugly game and be like, that's just what they do? No. And then the narrative is going to be Harbaugh won the big game against Ohio State and then couldn't finish the job off, right? I mean, I can already hear the narrative happening. So for Michigan fans who've been tortured, I'm not rooting for that. I'm just saying, if it were to happen, it wouldn't surprise me. So it's just a lot of points here, especially over 10. So I think I was the smart side, but I don't love that one.
Right.
Moving on to what I do love in the Mountain West game. Utah State is at San Diego State I guess, because San Diego State's been playing all their games in Carson up the road. So it's a quasi home game for San Diego State, as has been all year for them. What is your take for us on this one?
So when this line first came out, I was kind of in a rush to back San Diego State because in my mind, I had it that Utah State has had some real stinkers this year. So going back and looking at their schedule, Boise State, one of those, well, we can't say it's the upper echelon in the Mountain West this year necessarily, but usually pretty upper half of the Mountain West team. They lost 27-3. They only put up 26 points against Colorado State, who wasn't that good. They only beat UNLV by 4. And then the one that really stuck with me and kind of what led me down this path of thinking was 2 weeks ago, Utah State played Wyoming. Wyoming, probably the team that's most stylistically similar to San Diego State. And Utah State got ran over in that game. Wyoming gained 9 yards per play in this game. It was unbelievable. Utah State lost that game 44-17. So my initial thought was I need to be backing San Diego State here, because they could easily do to Utah State what Wyoming did. Well, then I went and looked at San Diego State's results this year. And I don't know if you've looked at San Diego State's results.
I don't even want to hear it.
Okay, yeah, they're not that great, guys. Mountain, don't want to say they're that great. They're a good Mountain West team. They
11 wins.
They don't get style points, I guess is what I'm getting at. They don't go for style points in these wins. So their Mountain West games, they beat New Mexico by 24. And then the rest of their Mountain West wins were by 6, 6, 10. Oh, that was lost, excuse me. 6, 6, 7, 2, 8, 11. They're not going to get a lot of style points. That being said, there is something I like in this game, and that is the under. And right now for us, it's at 50.5. 50.5 is a garbage number. Okay. So you would obviously, you mentioned with Cincinnati and UH, 52 is a pretty key number. I would like this a lot at 52. I don't think it's getting to 52. For me, there's really no difference between 50.5 and like 49. So I would hold on.
And probably even 48.5, because I don't see 7 touchdowns happening in this game. And there could be weird extra point field goal shenanigans, but 48 is much more likely. Even I think 47 is more likely in this game than 49 is. I see it being more likely that there's 4 field goals rather than to get to 47 rather than 7 touchdowns against 49 and no field goals.
Right. So what I am holding out for is hoping that this jumps back up to 51. I don't think it's going to 52, but I would be happy with 51 or 51.5. And then if I just have to wait and take it at like 49, then so be it. That's fine. I would rather have 49.5 than 50.5. So the under will probably be a play for me here, but just waiting on the movement there because I do not like 50.5.
Yeah. So I tweeted this already. If you follow me on Twitter, if you're listening to this now, pause the podcast and go bet San Diego State. Just we'll wait. Just hit the pause button and then go bet San Diego State and then come back and then I'll tell you why. If you want to listen to why, then you can pause later. That's fine too. Look, I'm only giving San Diego State 1 point for home field because there's like nobody at those games.
Right.
They have to travel. They've at least been traveling to the same place, which I guess helps. They're used to, like, all the teams stay in a hotel. Like no one sleeps in their own bed the night before a game on these situations anyway. They all stay in a hotel anyway, so they're at least staying in the same hotel. They're getting used to, I guess. But I mean, it's like basically no home field. So I'm giving them only 1 point, and the model thinks this should be San Diego State minus 10.5. I agree with everything you said, but man, I'd already pulled up Utah State's schedule because I was going to read off some of these clunkers. But I mean, is there a single impressive thing that they've done this season? Like, they lost at home by 2 touchdowns to BYU. They beat Air Force by 4. That was back in September.
They beat Washington State the first game of the season. That's the most impressive thing they've done all season. Yeah.
Right. Their 2 most impressive wins were win at Washington State and a win at Air Force.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks of the season.
By 2 of the first 3. They had North Dakota in there. 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season by combined 7 points. And that's good. And if you build off of that, yes. But my goodness, after that they got shellacked by Boise at home. They got beat handily at home by BYU. They only beat UNLV by 4. They only beat Colorado State by 2. They got Hawaii. Hawaii actually looked okay this week on the mainland, but Hawaii, who struggled on the mainland, they beat them. Great. They beat New Mexico State, New Mexico on the road. Great. Yeah. They beat the San Jose State team who struggled, and then the Wyoming game. There's nothing there to like.
Right.
Best bet for me, San Diego State minus 6. I cannot understand this number at all. I understand the total is low. I understand that San Diego State doesn't have style points, but look, San Diego State beat a Boise State team last week by more than this.
Right.
In a game that wasn't fluky. Look, I watched that game. That was not a fluke. I had the wrong side on Boise State. They got out early, and then San Diego State just methodically marched all over them. And Boise State was a good enough team to not let it get out of hand. Boise State was a good enough team to move the ball enough and force San Diego State into long drives. They were good enough defense to bend but not break a few times. But I mean, they got crushed against San Diego State, and Utah State's a worse team. This makes no sense to me. I cannot emphasize this one enough. Best bet of the weekend for me. So
yeah,
San Diego State minus 6. This line makes no sense. Just go again. If you haven't already, pause, go play this, come back. We'll finish up the last 2 games when you return from making that wager. Next one, a bit of a segment here. I'm calling this "What Are We Doing Here?" Southern Cal at California, a game of 2 4-7 teams that was postponed because of COVID issues earlier in the season. That both teams last week had either one of them won. This game has a lot of meaning to get to a bowl game.
Yeah, and you understand why it's being played.
You understand why it's being played. There will not be any 5-7 bowl teams this year. If you have not heard, there will be enough. There will be no 5-7 bowl teams. So this isn't even a win and we're one of the teams that can get in because of like academic, because both these teams, both these schools would be able to meet the academic criteria that the NCAA has. Can't do that. So what are we doing here? I can't imagine a lot of fans showing up for this one. I can't imagine, especially Southern Cal, wanting to play this game. You wonder how much they'd all just rather like go home and be done with all of this, but they're playing anyway. California is a short 2.5 point favorite.
Yeah. So don't know what the total is on this game. Line says 2.5. Sure, I'll believe you. I didn't look anything into this game. I'm just winging all of this. But here's my thing on Southern Cal. So they won big after they fired their coach, and now I think it may be a situation where, you know, you're a baseball player and your dad's never at the games because he's at work, but then he shows up, you know, in the sixth inning in the middle of a big game, and you see your dad up in the stands, and all of a sudden you got 5 more miles an hour on your fastball because you're trying to close out this little league game, and your dad's there watching you now. Is that what Lincoln Riley is going to do for USC here? Is everybody going to be happy because daddy's going to be sitting up in the stands now?
Very, very possibly. But what if that 5 mile an hour leads you to be a little bit more reckless, and now you hit the first 3 batters of the inning?
It's Cal. It's a risk you got to take against Cal. So anyway, there's no freaking way I'm playing this game at all. But if I had to pick a side, I think it would be Southern Cal. I think they could potentially get a big boost, and kind of some of these players know what they're playing for next year. You know, playing for a role on a team with a coach that's going to make things really exciting. You know, probably going to get them back on the up and up. So I think Southern Cal is going to be energized this week as much as you can be energized for a game like this. Will it matter? I have no idea. Southern Cal's not very good. So who knows? But if I had to be on the side, it would probably be SC.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of money wagered on this game because you've got all the conference championship games, and then you've got this standalone game late at night. This is the only one.
I don't understand. Why are we getting, like, is this supposed to be like some kind of dessert, like after the main entree or something? This is not what this game is. This game needs to be at like
this isn't even
12:30 kick on Pac-12 network. Like
this isn't even like fruit for dessert. This is like this is like eating vegetables for dessert.
Yeah, this doesn't deserve its own standalone time slot after all of these other games that have been played. This needs to just be played early in the day, get it over with, and everybody can move on with their lives.
If you are worked up a little bit after all the other conference championship games, this will be one to kind of cool you down, of 2 teams that may just not aren't very good and don't actually care. I actually have these 2 teams power rated about the same, which kind of blows my mind. So I make this number right about the line at 2.5 here. I lean Cal for one reason. I think their players care more than USC players. I don't know what effect Riley's going to have on the situation, but I mean, Cal wants to win this game because Cal always wants to beat USC. USC, I'm sure that there are some players who are going to be very motivated with Riley on the sidelines now, but I think, or maybe not even at the sidelines, just watching, I guess, and caring. I'm not really sure what his plans are, right? But if either team just completely lays an egg at Southern Cal, I think California will try because they want to beat USC. So I think that's the right side. But my goodness, I cannot advocate a large investment on this. Don't chase on this game, people. Do not. Like I said, this is a small investment if you need a little something to cool down after all the conference championship games. I think Cal is the safer play because if it's a blowout, I think it's a Cal blowout. Over USC. Otherwise, I think it's a close game and you might have some excitement there. But my goodness, this game anything could happen with regards to the effort level because we don't see a lot of these. We very rarely see these regular season games this week. The last time I recall one was we had Florida State played a game that was pushed back because of a hurricane, and they were 5-6 at the time. And so it was a big game for them to get the win and get bowl eligible. This one's a whole different story. That wraps us up for this week. We are going to talk about Navy-Army. We'll be off next week before we come back with a bowl podcast. So we're going to go ahead and talk about Navy-Army right now. Only one shop has a line, and that's the one that we are using for this one. It makes Army a 9.5 point favorite as the quasi-designated home team, I guess, at a game in New Jersey, which I assume that it will be mostly 50-50 between the fans.
So this is a game where, usually I don't call out the model, but this is a game where like the model needs to grow eyes and like actually watch these games and, maybe go back through history and see what these games are. You talk about rivalry games all the time. Well, throw the records out the window, yada, yada, yada. But that's not always the case. But in Army Navy, like it's literally like this, that may have been where, this phrase was termed and coined because Army Navy, throw the records out the window. It's going to be a good close game. Obviously, nobody plays a style that's going to allow itself, I think, for this game to get very out of hand. I have been fooled once earlier this year. I said that the Air Force Navy game was going to go over the total, and yeah, that didn't happen. That same logic does not apply to the Army Navy game. Those games do not go over; they go under very, very, very consistently. But usually I would say, oh yeah, play the under, love playing totals. No, 9.5 points with Navy. Navy's been playing a lot better the second half of the season. 9.5 points is a lot of points in this game. So official play for me here, I'm going to be taking the 9.5 points with Navy. Obviously would love something like 10. So maybe wait till next week and play it. But even at 9.5, feel more than comfortable getting those 9.5 points. I think that's going to be plenty to cover here.
I'm on the other side. I'm laying the 9.5 with Army. The model, you already kind of alluded to this. The model makes this Army minus 13.5. Again, giving no points for home field. I think Army's a much better team. Navy has been playing better lately, but the competition that they faced to me is not of the same caliber as Army. I think you make an interesting point in the throw the records out the window, but and I could be wrong here, but I feel like a lot of these games do turn out to be blowouts because one team is not letting off the gas because they want to win and they want to win big. And so these Army Navy games to me have tended to be, it's almost like we talked about with Iowa, Michigan. I think it's going to be a very similar setup where these games have tended to be one team comes in, there's been a couple of years that have been close, but for the most part, one team has come in much better than the other. Most years it's been Navy. A couple of years lately, it's been Army. But most years in recent history, it's been Navy. And it's either been Navy wins by 40 or it's been a really tight game. And for a lot of those years, Navy barely won. Then one year, Army got the upset. But it's either going to be a 3-point really close game or it's going to be a blowout. And so I think I get what you're saying. If you are liking Navy, hold off and see if you get that 10. I think this number will balloon out a little bit more. I think it's going to go towards that number of 13. I just think that Army is in a different class of the teams that Navy's been playing. And I think that it's more likely this game becomes a blowout than a close game. And so that's why I'm on Army on this one. But of course, we'll see how it goes. Always fun to have a head-to-head here, especially to wrap up the regular season.
Yeah.
That wraps us up for another episode of Picks with the Professor. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe or follow if you aren't already. We will have bowl podcasts. So if you're subscribed, those will appear right in your feed right when they first release. Remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.